Quote, reckless, outrageous and undignified. Another Republican lawmaker lashing out at Donald Trump, while the Chinese president is establishing his legacy and becoming more powerful than ever. And the suspects in the murder of Kim Jong-un's brother return to the scene of the crime. Thanks for your company, everyone. I'm Michael Holmes. Amra has the day off. Welcome to CNN Today. And we begin with the growing contrast between the leaders of the world's two superpowers. China's president achieving a level of influence and dominance not seen in decades. His grip on power stronger than ever. We will go live to Matt Rivers in a few minutes in Beijing. But first, the situation in Washington couldn't be more different as Donald Trump faces a rebellion in the ranks of his own party. It has been said that more than once the most dangerous person is the one who has nothing to lose. In politics, that means you're not running for anything. Now, that scenario has prompted not one but two Republican senators to come out swinging against the president, Donald Trump. Jeff Flake of Arizona announcing his retirement on Tuesday, following in the footsteps of his colleague from Tennessee, Bob Corker. CNN's Jeff Zeleny reports on the rebellion in the Republican ranks.
President Trump on Capitol Hill today, trying to sell his tax plan and revive the agenda of a fractured Republican Party. But only an hour after leaving with a wave and a smile, Republican Senator Jeff Flake delivered a stinging rebuke of the president.
We must stop pretending that the degradation of our politics and the conduct of some in our executive branch are normal. They are not normal.
Flake's announcement that he would not seek re-election and his blunt concession that he's no longer comfortable with Trump's Republican Party.
There is an undeniable potency to a populist appeal by mischaracterizing or misunderstanding our problems and giving in to the impulse to scapegoat and belittle. The impulse to scapegoat and belittle threatens to turn us into a fearful, backward-looking people.
Came on the same day the Republican picked a new fight with Senator Bob Corker, chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. It was an extraordinary moment for a party in power. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders called Flake's decision to leave the Senate good news and blasted his speech as inappropriate.
I noticed that a lot of the language I didn't think was befitting of the Senate floor.
She also defended the president's fight with Corker.
He's a fighter. We've said it many times before. The people of this country didn't elect somebody to be weak. They elected somebody to be strong.
After Corker said in a round of morning television interviews the president should leave details of the tax plan to Congress, Mr. Trump launched a searing attack on Twitter. The president said Corker, who couldn't get elected dog catcher in Tennessee, is now fighting tax cuts. 7 minutes later, the president added, Corker dropped out of the race in Tennessee when I refused to endorse him, and now it's only negative on anything Trump. Look at his record. The senator fired off this rebuttal. Same untruths from an utterly untruthful president. Hashtag alert the daycare staff. The extraordinary exchange between a Republican president and one of the party's senior statesmen devolved from there. Corker, who also decided against seeking re-election next year, said the president did not refuse to endorse him.
No, it's not accurate, and, you know, nothing that he said in his tweets today were truthful nor accurate, and he knows it, and people around him know it. I would hope the staff over there would figure out ways of controlling him.
When asked by CNN's Manu Raju if the president is a liar, Corker had this to say.
The president has great difficulty with the truth on many issues.
Asked whether he would support him again, Corker did not hesitate.
No way. No way. No, I think that he's proven himself unable to rise to the occasion.
Taken together, the decision by Flake, who also has quarreled repeatedly with Mr. Trump, underscored the challenges facing the GOP and potential complications to the president's agenda.
Reckless, outrageous, and undignified behavior has become excused and countenanced as telling it like it is, when it is actually just reckless, outrageous, and undignified. And when such behavior emanates from the top of our government, it is something else. It is dangerous to a democracy.
The move stunned Republicans and overshadowed discussion of a tax plan the party still hopes will be the one major legislative accomplishment of the year. House Speaker Paul Ryan was among GOP leaders trying to extinguish the unusual and, to many, the unseemly civil war.
So all this stuff you see on a daily basis on Twitter this and Twitter that, forget about it. Let's focus on helping people.
Now, the White House said some of Senator Flake's comments were not befitting for the Senate floor. But what about the president's comments himself? He made fun of his shortness in stature. He called him Little Bob and said he couldn't even win a dog catcher's race. Michael, the reality here, the Republican Party is splintering. The question is, what effect will it have on the Trump agenda? That tax cut plan is the one thing Republicans are holding out hope for major accomplishment yet this year. Michael?
And thanks, Jeff. Jeff Zeleny reporting there. Now, I spoke about all of this a little earlier with CNN political director David Chalian in Washington.
I doubt, and I'm really skeptical, Michael, that we're going to see their words in any way upend the Republican Party and somehow completely create a floodgates moment where every Republican who is staying in the game and running for re-election feels the need to make the same comments. These two guys looked at the political reality in front of them and decided to bow out, but to make these comments in accordance with those decisions.
I suppose a lot of voters out there might be cynical and say, boy, it takes them going on their way out before they will speak their minds, and isn't that a shame for our elected officials? I mean, where does this go? Two disaffected members on their way out who don't matter, or the start of a GOP civil war, if one doesn't already exist behind closed doors? How fractured is it?
Oh, the party is fractured. There's no doubt about it. The civil war, as you call it and describe it, this has been going on inside the Republican Party for the better part of a decade, I would say, and has certainly hit a fever pitch. One thing to note as we talk about these senators retiring and going out the door, they're both still going to be serving in the United States Senate for another 14 months. So when Bob Corker, the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, the top legislator on Capitol Hill dealing with America's foreign policy, with oversight over the State Department, when he is fundamentally saying that the president, A, is a liar, can't be trusted, world leaders don't trust him, and B, has no desire to become competent at his job, that he has to serve side by side with that president for another 14 months to actually implement America's foreign policy, raises questions about how that's going to work out.
David Chalian there a little earlier. Well, while Mr. Trump struggles for credibility and respect, Xi Jinping is solidifying his power over China. President Xi, standing right in the centre there, centre stage literally, is emerging from the Communist Party Congress stronger than ever. His name now appears in the Constitution, and his thoughts on socialism are enshrined as a guiding principle for the party. Our Matt Rivers is covering all of this, and a big announcement also coming up live from Beijing for us. Matt, first of all, let's start with the significance of this. The symbolism, sure, but the power that comes with his name being added to the Constitution. Why does it matter?
Well, it matters because in the way his name was added to the Constitution, there has only been one other leader that has had his name enshrined in the Communist Party Constitution in a similar, albeit slightly more powerful way, and that would be the founder of Communist China, Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong thought and Xi Jinping thought are both enshrined in the Constitution. Now, Xi Jinping will never be Mao Zedong. I don't want to necessarily say that both men are now on equal footing, but it is safe to say that Xi Jinping, given that he has his thought written into the Constitution, is now, at least formally speaking, the most powerful Chinese leader since Mao Zedong. And that is remarkable. I mean, in 2012, when Xi Jinping assumed power, this was a party that was emerging from the economic global recession, but had a ton of problems. Things like corruption, for example, were eroding the public trust here in the Communist Party. And few people thought that Xi Jinping, in 5 short years, would be mentioned in the same breath as Chairman Mao Zedong, and yet here we are. And that really puts him in a unique position moving forward. If the last 5 years, Michael, were all about amassing this political power and really consolidating political power in the Communist Party and specifically in Xi Jinping, then the next 5 years is going to be, well, how does he use it? And how does he execute his vision for China? And he is in an incredibly good position to be able to do that in a unilateral way. No really collective governing. This is a strongman type politician, someone who is unequivocally able to make the key decisions for the Communist Party. And anyone who goes against him, given that his name is now enshrined and his thoughts are now enshrined in the Communist Party constitution, anyone who speaks out about Xi Jinping is speaking out against the party itself. And that is a no-no here in China. Good times to be Xi Jinping.
It sure is. In a couple of hours, we're going to find out a little bit more about those who will be under him, the Standing Committee, and you'll be following that for us. And we'll check in with you. Matt, we're going to leave it there, unfortunately. Matt Rivers, thanks. Well, our next guest is the author of How China's Leaders Think, the inside story of China's past, current and future leaders. Robert Lawrence Kuhn is also a long-time advisor to the Chinese government. He comes to us from Beijing, a man who knows this story well. What has Xi Jinping managed to achieve with this Congress and getting his name in the Constitution? It's a 5-yearly event, but you've said that he has framed the agenda for the next 30 years.
There's no question about it. This is the most significant political event in decades in China. And to understand why, one has to appreciate the significance of political philosophy in China, because it's the foundation of the party and the party leads the country. So now Xi Jinping is the official originator of the new policy, the new philosophy for the new era, and he is the overarching arbiter of what constitutes that philosophy and policy as it evolves. So he is in an extremely powerful position vis-a-vis everyone else in China. He's still required to respect what's called democratic centralism and collective leadership, but it has a significantly different character because he actually can overrule it. He needs to listen to it according to party tradition, but he is the boss.
It's enormous power, and without getting bogged down, for those watching who are interested in knowing it, these thoughts that are being put into the Constitution, the philosophy, just summarize for us the key aspect of that.
Sure. There are 14 points, which I won't summarize, but I'll do it in 4 big categories. Number 1 is the overarching importance of the party. The party had been retreating, the government expanding. President Xi has reversed that. The party is now expanding in all different areas. Number 2 is the developmental philosophy of the country in terms of its economic development. 3 is the sovereignty of China, the fact that China is now moving to the center stage of the world. A really remarkable statement, breaking with the past, that China is now becoming proactive in all different respects. And finally, China's people orientation, which is the direction of what the objective is. So you can do it in 2 categories as well. Right. People orientation on the one hand, and a national rejuvenation on the other.
And that actually becomes part of the Constitution. Is he the world's most powerful leader?
You know, one can make that argument today, and then the next question is, what is he going to do with that power? And it was all laid out in a 65-page, 32,000-character report, which was quite fascinating for those of us who like to follow China. So there's a lot there. People will be analyzing it for some time. There's certainly a lot of problems in China. Xi Jinping knows that. He talked about it. He certainly doesn't downplay it. There are many what they call contradictions in their Marxist dialectical materialism. Particularly now is a disparity between what the people need, and what they call the imbalanced, inadequate development. And this is not just pure GDP growth. This is providing for people's well-being, from getting rid of pollution to eliminating the lines at major hospitals.
And there's some realities there. You know, when you've got so much power in the hands of one man, there must be risks that come along with that. You know, sure, if you're criticizing him, you're criticizing the party, but aren't there risks in having an essentially untouchable leader, and the risks to him? Pushback perhaps against his corruption purge, having assumed control over all of this domestic and foreign policy, he could find himself the scapegoat if it goes badly at home or abroad.
Look, I think those are all relevant factors. No political system in the world is perfect, but certainly the Chinese system for the developmental process has worked well. I would say in the corruption area, which is exceedingly important to Xi Jinping, anti-corruption as well as anti-poverty, major signature policies of his. I'd say the risk on corruption was more in the past. The consolidation of power with both the army and the party now is pretty strong, that I would say the risk to him from the corruption side is less. But you're right. The ball is in his court. He's the coach, and he's the main player. And so what happens to the economy, China's place in the world, its relationship with the U.S., territorial disputes, these are all now on his watch.
I wanted to ask you one more thing. We'll know more when the standing committee members are named and we get a sense of that. That's coming up in a few hours. But a lot of people feel that he's not obviously, at least, grooming a successor. I mean, I was reading an analysis piece by Willie Lamb who says, according to his sources, Mr. Xi and some of his aides are making plans for him to remain in power longer, perhaps till 2027. He could revive the position of party chairman. Might Mr. Xi be around longer than 5 years?
The way I read into it, the plan is two goals. One is to 2020, which obviously takes place within the term of the 19th Party Congress. The second goes to 2050, but it's divided into two sections. One is from 2020 to 2035, which basically finishes modernization. It is clear to me that Xi Jinping will be the key political figure until that date. I call it, he will be the key political figure for the rest of his sentient life.
Wow. Robert Lawrence Kuhn, longtime advisor to the Chinese government and author of How China's Leaders Think, the inside story of China's past, current and future leaders. Fascinating discussion. Great to have you. And there's the book there on the screen. Fascinating discussion. Great to have you on the program. All right, coming up here on the program, a Malaysian judge orders 2 suspects to retrace their steps in connection with the killing of Kim Jong-un's half-brother. We'll have details about an extraordinary visit to the crime scene. We'll be right back. The Trump administration set to resume refugee admissions from all countries, but with new, enhanced, as they're being called, vetting rules. That's according to a senior official. The White House just releasing a new executive order as President Trump's travel ban restrictions expire. Joining us now from Washington with the details, CNN politics reporter Tal Kopan. And, what does it mean?
Well, the top line here is that, first of all, the 120-day pause on refugee admissions from certain countries is over. So now refugee applicants from all countries will be considered. But the rub, as you mentioned, are these enhanced vetting procedures. And the truth is there's a lot we don't know at this point and may never know about what these vetting measures entail. In fact, administration officials are citing law enforcement sensitivity. And in not knowing what those measures entail, one of the big questions is how much time this could perhaps add to the refugee application process, which, as many of your viewers know, is probably already a lengthy period of time, several years for most refugees. And so in addition to that, there are 11 countries, which again, the administration is not naming, but they cite as high risk, that will be subject to even further scrutiny and that applicants may apply from, but have to demonstrate that their application is in the national interest and they pose no security risk. And we don't know how much those additional measures will add on to individuals from those countries. So we do know that applications can resume, but there may be some substantial slowdown of the process for those applicants.
And there's a lot of intrusion involved too. I know people who've been through the refugee process. It does take years. It is intrusive. It is exhaustive in many ways. What sort of other things? There's like social media examination being involved in this too. What other hoops are they going to have to go through?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. They're going to look at the social media histories. There's a heavy emphasis on rooting out fraud here. So one of the measures they're doing is to deploy fraud detection officers into the field to participate in some of the interview processes. They're also saying they're going to collect more biographical data to make sure that who refugees are claiming to be and where they claim to come from is matching up with the facts. They're going to do additional scrutiny for perhaps criminal backgrounds, enhanced training for their officers to detect some of these potential fraud or criminal backgrounds. And so all of these measures in sum are going to enhance already, as you said, strident reviews of individuals' background when they go through the refugee application process. Yeah, it's going to make it long and hard. And a lot of these people who have been fleeing war-torn areas don't necessarily have everything they're going to need. It's going to be tough. Tal Kopan, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Ahead of President Donald Trump's first trip to East Asia next month, U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is visiting 3 countries in South Asia. He stopped on Tuesday in Pakistan, where he met with the country's Prime Minister and shared what some saw as a long and awkward handshake. It was long, that's for sure. The Trump administration's South Asia strategy focuses on China's expansive view of its role in the region, also on the future of Afghanistan. Tillerson did stop in Kabul on Monday. He next heads to India. 2 women accused of killing the half-brother of North Korea's leader in Malaysia were back at the scene of the crime on Tuesday. They were surrounded by heavily armed police officers, as you can see there, as they were ordered to retrace their steps at the Kuala Lumpur airport. Kim Jong-nam was murdered at a terminal there in February. Malaysian authorities say the women were trained by North Korean agents to swab Kim's face with a deadly nerve agent. North Korea has repeatedly denied any involvement. The women have pled not guilty. Paula Hancock's joining me now from Seoul, South Korea. Yes, an extraordinary scene, and it still is an extraordinary case when you think about it. What stage is it at?
Well, Michael, I mean, this was such a brazen murder in the middle of the day, and it was in an international airport. So really, the shock factor of what has happened is going to be feeding into this court case. It is an ongoing court case. The 2 women, an Indonesian woman, a Vietnamese woman, do say that they are innocent. They say they're not guilty. They believe that they were part of a prank TV show. This is their defense, saying that they had been asked to put a substance on a man's face for television, but Malaysian prosecutors simply don't buy that. They believe that they had been recruited by North Korean agents, so they believe that they knew exactly what they were doing. So the point of this recreation, according to officials, was so that they could fill in some of the gaps. We have CCTV footage of the remarkable murder, but there are certain gaps, they say. For example, after the check-in kiosk, then Kim Jong-nam went to a clinic claiming he felt unwell, and then the 2 women went to the bathroom to wash their hands, as they say they had been told to do after they carried out this putting the substance on Kim Jong-nam's face, and then the taxi stand that they went to afterwards. So it's really, as you see there, very heavy police presence, the 2 women wearing bulletproof vests, but they were also accompanied by lawyers, by the judge, by the prosecutors, trying to piece together exactly what happened. Michael?
All right, Paula Hancock's there in Seoul, keeping an eye on that extraordinary case. Thanks so much. Well, 2 of the most prominent leaders of Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement are now out of jail. Joshua Wong and Nathan Law were granted bail on Tuesday. The 2 were jailed in August for offences related to that massive 2014 umbrella movement, you may recall, both vowing to keep up the fight.
Maybe one day, a few months later, Nathan and I will need to go into the jail again. But I hope to say that the government can lock up our body, but they can't lock up our mind. At the same time, they can put us in prison, but they can't put aside our determination to fight for democracy.
The 2 leaders' political party says the pair will have to report to police weekly. Neither are allowed to leave Hong Kong before their appeal later next month. And a 3rd protest leader, by the way, Alex Chow, is still serving time. We are learning new details about the deadly ambush in Niger, what officials are now saying the American forces were doing there when they were attacked. That's coming up on the program, and the father of one fallen soldier speaks out about the controversy surrounding Donald Trump's condolence call to a Gold Star family. We'll hear from Kazir Khan ahead. And welcome back to CNN Today, everyone. I'm Michael Holmes. It's time to update you on the top stories. Republican U.S. Senator Jeff Flake took to the chamber floor on Tuesday to announce he won't be running for re-election, but then went on to lash out at the behaviour and policies of President Donald Trump. The Arizona lawmaker called on other members of the party to stand up and criticise the president as well. Flake isn't the only Republican lawmaker slamming President Trump. Tennessee Senator Bob Corker and the president escalating their public feud, with Corker accusing the president of constant non-truth telling and Mr. Trump calling Corker incompetent. In the coming hours, China's president is expected to be formally granted a second 5-year term, and the Communist Party will reveal the members of its powerful Politburo. That's the committee that makes most of the country's major decisions. New information is emerging, meanwhile, about that deadly ambush in Niger that killed 4 U.S. soldiers. 2 U.S. military officials tell CNN the U.S. Army team was gathering intelligence on a terrorist leader when it was attacked. Michelle Kaczynski with the details.
3 weeks after a firefight in Niger left 4 U.S. soldiers dead, only now are details beginning to emerge about what they were doing and how this escalated. Military officials now tell CNN the 12-man Special Operations Task Force, working with an additional 30 Nigerian troops, had been on a mission to gather intelligence on a senior terrorist leader in the area. Not to kill or capture, but to seek information. And according to other officials, this particular U.S. team had only been in Niger for a matter of weeks. This was either their first or second patrol. As chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Joseph Dunford alluded to in a wide-ranging press conference, their mission may have kept their movements somewhat fluid. Dunford himself has questions about the course they took and the decision-making.
Did the mission of U.S. forces change during the operation? Did our forces have adequate intelligence, equipment, and training? Did they decide to do something different than the original patrol with their partner forces? Those are some of the key questions that the investigation is looking to uncover.
He did share some more elements of the timeline. On the morning of October 3rd, one day before the ambush, the U.S. and Nigerian team left Niger's capital of Niamey en route to an area near the village of Tongo Tongo for an intelligence gathering mission.
They did not expect resistance on this particular patrol, at least when they first planned it.
The next morning, October 4th, the troops felt the villagers were delaying their departure. Perhaps the first indication something was wrong. By mid-morning, the U.S. and Nigerian forces left the village and were heading back to their operating base when up to 50 ISIS-affiliated fighters attacked them with small arms and rocket-propelled grenades. The U.S. soldiers fought back, but were in unarmored vehicles and only had light weapons, such as machine guns. They requested help an hour later.
My judgment would be that unit thought they could handle the situation without additional support.
A drone arrived overhead within minutes and captured video of the scene. French jets swooped in an hour later. So 2 hours after the firefight began, but did not drop bombs because they couldn't tell the enemy and friendly forces apart.
Something you also can't underestimate is how chaotic an incident like this is.
The firefight was tough, lasting several hours from mid-morning into the evening of the 4th. Still unclear why and how Sergeant LaDavid Johnson was separated from his team and not found until 2 days later by Nigerian forces. Dunford says U.S. troops were involved in that search from the moment Johnson was missing until the end.
Michelle Kaczynski reporting there. Well, the widow of one fallen soldier has spoken out about the lack of answers and her anger after the condolence call from U.S. President Donald Trump, and now another Gold Star family member weighing in on the controversy. Fazir Khan rose to prominence for his speech at the 2016 Democratic National Convention. His son was killed in Iraq in 2004 by a car bomb. As you may recall, he brought the House down with this message to Mr. Trump during his remarks last year.
Have you ever been to Arlington Cemetery? Go look at the graves of brave patriots who died defending United States of America. You will see all faiths, genders, and ethnicities. You have sacrificed nothing, and no one
Kazir Khan is the author of a new book. It is entitled An American Family, a Memoir of Hope and Sacrifice. He joins me now from New York, and thanks for doing so. I actually want to start off with some sound from General John Kelly, the White House Chief of Staff, the other day, and then discuss with you. Let's play that sound.
You know, when I was a kid growing up, a lot of things were sacred in our country. Women were sacred, looked upon with great honor. That's obviously not the case anymore, as we see from recent cases. Life, the dignity of life, was sacred. That's gone. Religion, that seems to be gone as well. Gold Star families, I think that left in the convention over the summer. But I just thought the selfless devotion that brings a man or woman to die on the battlefield, I just thought that that might be sacred.
And Kazir Khan, that line, Gold Star families, I think that left in the convention over the summer. Do you have any doubt he was referring to you and your appearance at the Democratic convention?
No, I have no doubt, but there is a difference. We were standing for the best of this country. We were standing in support of the goodness of this country, the values that Captain Humayun Khan was made of. But John Kelly was standing with the most bigoted, with most not telling the truth president of the United States. That was the difference. But the call of the moment and the day was restraint, dignity. These remarks could have been made after the burial, after some days have passed. That was my complaint. That remains my gripe, that this was not handled with full dignity and respect and courtesy that must be accorded to these Gold Star families and to the families of 4 of my hero sons that died under very difficult circumstances, protecting our freedom.
And you do call them your sons, I know you do. General Kelly, of course, lost a son in war as well. I mean, how do you take his comments? As a Gold Star father or as the President's Chief of Staff? Do you feel it was politics?
This was political expediency by the President and his advisor. It was imperative on John Kelly. We salute his military service, his family's sacrifice and service, but that day he was standing there as a politician defending Donald Trump. His advice to the Trump had been, he knows Trump lacks empathy, moral compass. His advice should have been restraint. His advice should have been dignity for the families. These grievances could have been dealt with afterward. He was very much capable of remaining aware that what difficulty families go when they lose their loved one under these circumstances. Restraint, dignity was call of the day. That was not done.
Your book, An American Family, a Memoir of Hope and Sacrifice, what are you hoping to achieve by telling that story?
Our story is really a story of all immigrants. We wrote this book in the spirit of immigration. It is said that America is a nation of immigrants. I say this nation is made of a spirit of immigration, a spirit of immigrants, which is to make life better for themselves, struggle, make an effort, and pay tribute to the dignities that are enshrined in these blessed documents to every citizen.
Kazir Khan speaking with me earlier. Well, 250,000 people are expected to pay homage to the late Thai king, and they're braving some heavy rain for it too. We'll look at the extensive preparations for the royal funeral. You're watching CNN Today. We'll be right back. A flame lit in Greece is now on its way to South Korea. The Olympic flame lit, as it always is, in Olympia on Tuesday. And now the countdown to February's Winter Olympics is underway. There's little more than 100 days until the opening ceremony. Legendary former footballer Park Ji-sung was the first South Korean to carry the flame. Mourners in Bangkok are gathering early to pay their final respects to Thailand's late king. A tropical downpour isn't keeping many people from trying to grab a spot for Wednesday's royal funeral, where hundreds of artists have created more than 500 stunning sculptures in memory of the late king. Take a look.
จริงๆก็เป็นเกียรติที่สุดนะครับในชีวิตคนทำงานศิลปะนะครับที่เราได้มีโอกาสมาถวายงานรับใช้พระองค์นะครับโดยเฉพาะงานสำคัญเช่นนี้นะครับมันก็ในใจหนึ่งมันก็เป็นความภาคภูมิใจนะครับแต่อีกขณะหนึ่งมันก็เป็นความที่เรารู้สึกสูญเสียนะครับแต่ว่าเราก็จะพยายามทำด้วยความรู้สึกที่มุ่งมั่นนะครับเพื่อที่จะให้งานออกมาสมพระเกียรติและก็ดีที่สุด
And you can check out more of our stories on our Facebook page. Go to facebook.com/CNN Today to find stories making headlines around Asia. There's already some of them from today up there on the website. You can also watch the best interviews from our show. They're all very good. Don't forget to like us because Deb, our producer, is paid per like. And feel free to comment on our stories at facebook.com/CNN Today. But keep it G-rated. Thanks for watching. I'm Michael Holmes at HolmesCNN, at AmraCNN, at CNN Today. If you're on Twitter, World Sport with Kate Riley coming up.